I think that was the catalyst for what occurred. I'm not privy to all the conversation that the negotiators and mental health had with him. I think there were some other things interjected during their conversation, but that definitely was the catalyst for what occurred yesterday afternoon.
Any injuries to any residents, law enforcement personnel, anybody like that? Solely him?
Everyone was fine.
Was it one or two apartments that that were burned?
I know that his apartment was burned. I'm not sure about the adjoining apartments. I did not enter the crime scene at that point. I'm gonna wait until their investigation is completed. We should have more information on that later.
Can we really briefly go over the timeline, starting around 1 a.m. of just a series of events? There was a lot said on that. I want to be clear on the order of things.
And my notes are pretty, I wrote them down the best I could off of our logs, so this is off as it was logged. So about 1 o'clock in the morning, there were shots fired from the apartment or in the apartment. I'm not sure which, but there were shots fired. 1:01 this morning, power was restored. At the same time, we attempted contact on both of the subject's phones, which we were unsuccessful with. 1:05, there were more shots fired inside the apartment, and about 1:10, the female subject who was in there with him apparently shouted out that they're not coming out, they were going to stay put, they weren't going to surrender themselves. 1:15, there was a decision made to port the window, and the reason for that was, again, we had active shooting. We felt there was increased danger to those that were there. Let me go back to that point again, and you might be wondering, why would we port it at 1 o'clock in the morning? Why didn't we do it earlier? The reason we did not is because we had the string of shooting first thing in the morning and no shooting after that. We had a female subject who was in the apartment, had not committed a crime, was not someone that we were going to arrest or charge with any type of crime. So she was there, but there was no necessity on our part at that time to press the issue. It seemed to be a calm issue at that point. So there was no, I think I mentioned yesterday that time was on our side. There was no reason to push the issue at that point because we had such a long period of time of good conversation. So going back to the timeline, about 1:20, more shots were fired. We again tried phone contact with the subject. Somewhere in that period of time, the female exited, and more shots were fired. 1:23, again, he came out onto the porch somewhere around that period of time. And no, I'm sorry, 1:23, more shots fired from inside, an exchange with police at that time. So he was inside at that time, and there was a brief exchange with police at that time. There are bullet holes from outside into the inside, and that would probably account for this period of time around 1:23. 1:25, we detected some kind of movement in the bathroom. About 1:30 or so, 1:40, 1:35, we shut the gas off because we had a concern that he had disconnected a gas line based upon our information earlier the day prior to actually dousing some kind of incendiary liquid around. 1:40, we moved a team forward to introduce chemical agents that were never introduced. 1:53, our team was probably just getting into place. 1:53, we saw black smoke coming from the apartment, and within seconds after that, maybe a minute at the most, we detected flame also. 1:56, more shots fired from the landing. So the smoke started, the fire started, the subject exited, and shots were fired from the landing out towards police, out towards the officers. And then there was an exchange with the officers, and about just prior to 2 o'clock, fire moved into the back of the residence to try and suppress the fire. At this time, around 2:02, the subject was down on the landing, and we were trying to make contact with him verbally to comply with our demands or our commands, which there was no compliance. And at 2:05, the team moved in and were able to handcuff the subject and bring him down the stairs. And shortly after that, medical on scene determined that he was deceased.
What time what time was it that they set off a flashbang? It kind of was like the beginning of
Yeah,
this whole sequence?
The distraction device was set off outside the window about 1:15 in the morning.
Sheriff, talk to me a little bit about the neighborhood there and the people's demeanor, their attitude. Obviously, they were out of their homes for a long time. Some of them still are. It's got to be frustrating. How was their attitude? How was talking to them? Did you see some frustration out there with them?
No, I didn't personally see any frustration. They were very happy that we were able to extricate them safely. They understood the gravity of the situation. And that's something I should really need to say about the community of McKinleyville. They have been overly supportive during this whole incident. We've had a great rapport with the community. The community has been a strong backing partner during this whole incident. But no, they obviously people are anxious to get back into their homes. What we did find later in the afternoon, in fact, I interacted with a couple of women that came up and said, hey, I'm just getting home from work. My kids are in apartment so-and-so. They've been there all day and they're scared. So and there were apartments that weren't necessarily adjoining, but in that area, and we helped them extricate those folks out of their apartments so they could go somewhere else. And so, I think that people were very supportive of what we were doing.
Mike, one clarification on the officers involved. Were they all sheriff's deputies, or were they was this SWAT team mixed with folks from other agencies?
Yeah, in fact, the sheriff's SWAT team is a mixture of Eureka PD officers and sheriff's deputies. And the SWAT team from Mendocino, I believe, were all deputy sheriffs, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, go back to one thing. You mentioned that right around 1 a.m., right before that series of events you just listed, there was like a kind of a changing of teams that
Right.
were in control. Is it just kind of coincidence that the series of events that began playing out was at that point, or?
Well, there could be a number of things going on. The fact that he was able to detect that there was movement outside, the subject inside.
Oh, okay.
So, I all I can do, Andrew, is my theory of what happened. I think during that exchange of personnel, there's movement. There's probably I think they utilized the Bearcat to help the exchange of those teams. So now there's movement, there's activity outside. My theory is probably at that point, to press the issue, he began firing inside the apartment to dissuade law enforcement from making any kind of dynamic entry or trying to get into his apartment. And that's the only thing I can think is up to that time, it had been pretty static. There had been no real movement, no activity from him other than he was upset the fact that he wasn't receiving calls any longer and that there was no internet. Earlier in the day, a decision was made to block his phone from any incoming calls other than from us. And the reason for that is because people were calling him and we weren't sure what the message was going to him at that point. We wanted him to focus on a rapport between our negotiators and himself. So we were able to, through the phone company, we were able to block any incoming calls other than our calls.
Through his cell phone provider.
Yeah, and he could make calls out because at one point he actually called. I think I mentioned that, called our 911 dispatch center and said, "Hey, tell those guys to leave. I'm not coming out."
And you said he blocked his internet to his phone?
Oh, well, I don't know if we blocked it to his phone, but I think the internet was shut off to the apartment for a period of time.
To clarify, the suspect's girlfriend isn't facing any charges.
No, she is not. Not to my knowledge.
Just to go back on with the flashbang, what was the reasoning for setting that off?
Well, a couple of things. You know, we had firing going on inside the apartment again. We had increased activity from him. There's two reasons for that. One was to distract him, to see if that would be enough for him to say, hey, I'm coming out. Number two, an effect that we weren't counting on is also precipitated the female inside to come out. And number three, if we were going to introduce chemical agents, we needed that window ported to assist us in deploying those chemical agents. And I think I said earlier, you know, that was always an option. It was an option that we did not want to come to. And the only reason we did force that option or go to that option was because we had active shooting again inside the apartment, and not only inside the apartment, but out towards officers.
What was the total amount of time the standoff lasted? How many hours was it?
I think it started somewhere around 9 o'clock yesterday morning, and it ended around 2 o'clock this morning.
So at the end of the whole event here, we were there with, we were off to the side of the road, and a young lady blew through the cones, blew through the sheriff's tape with some friends in the vehicle, and the CHP they pulled them out, ran the young lady, and did investigation right on the scene. But was that car had to be, because it was behind the tape, was that to be left behind by those people?
I have no information on that. I really don't know.
They were in no way, shape, or form involved with this at all? Was there
This is the first I've heard about it.
Okay.
So I
Yeah,
haven't
she came pretty close to all the media. And
what time was that?
oh God, was it 2:30?
Or 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Yeah, she.
It was just as Captain Thompson was about to brief us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no information on it. One thing I'd like to do prior to ending is I'd like to give a special thank you to, again, Mendocino County Sheriff Tom Ullman and all the support personnel, and of course, utilization of their Lincoln Bearcat. Also, the California Highway Patrol was heavily involved, along with Arcata Police Department, Eureka Police Department, with personnel and with actually SWAT members on my SWAT team, Fortuna Police Department, Drug Task Force, Humboldt State University PD is involved today with the CERT call out, CAL FIRE, United States National Park Service. It just so happened they were having a training day. They had somewhere in the vicinity of 9 or 10 law enforcement officers who were in transit for training. They heard it was going on and they self-deployed and were utilized quite heavily yesterday. State Parks was there and helped quite a bit. Mad River Ambulance. California Department of Fish and Wildlife had officers there. Arcata Fire was heavily involved. I really want to send a special thank you out to Thomas Home Centers. They were impacted the whole day and had no business going on because we took over their parking lot. We utilized their bathrooms. They opened up everything they could to us. They were very helpful. McKinleyville Community Services District, Humboldt County Mental Health, New Life Church helped with sheltering residents. Our Office of Emergency Services and Department of Justice helped us with much of the evidence collection and that type of thing. I definitely want to send out a special thank you to Arcata Fire volunteers. Yesterday, when I arrived on scene sometime after 1 o'clock, they had set up tents and had coolers full of cold drinks. They had sandwiches. They had food for my personnel as they came offline. They had coffee, whatever our guys needed, they had it, or if they didn't have it, they went out and got it. And they have been instrumental through this whole operation. I was out there this morning about 6 o'clock and they had coffee and they had stuff from McDonald's and fruit and all kinds of things to, again, sustain our people out there in the field. I can't thank them enough. This is something they train for. They're good at it, and they were very instrumental in taking care of our folks out there in the field.
Excuse me, Mike, did you say the New Hope Church? Because,
New Life Church.
because 16 residents were housed at the Church of the Joyful Healer
Okay.
on Central Avenue. So were there two churches that,
There must have been then. I was only aware of the one, and again, that the sheltering component was handled through our Office of Emergency Services, so.
the Red Cross hosted the residents at the Church of the Joyful Healer?
Okay, great. Yeah, Red Cross, I'm sorry. They were very instrumental. Red Cross was very instrumental in this work. If there's no other questions, we will have updates through our news releases that will be coming out probably on a daily basis right now until we have completed this investigation. I don't plan on having another press conference like this on this issue unless there's something dynamic that comes out of this. So again, I thank you for being here. I want to thank the community again for how instrumental they were in bringing this to a conclusion, even though it wasn't the conclusion we all wanted. But we were able to maintain the safety of the officers on scene and of the residents in the area, so I'm very thankful for that. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.